I'm just coming back here. Okay, here we are, a few minutes late. Welcome, Suzana.
Hello.
Nice to see you face today. Oh, let me fix this so that it's both of us gallery view. Yes, that works. Oh, just want to say that I'm feeling really, really raw and really tender today. I don't know if I know the month of October, as we know, astrologically is meant to be just nuts. And, really woke up with such a heavy heart today. And, just feeling, I think, I could justify it in all different ways. Like it's day 10, which is great. Only have 5 more days left of my quarantine, but I think it's really just taking a toll on me being isolated in this room and not having had breathed fresh air since I left the United States or touched the earth or felt the sun on me, which is usually the way that I self-regulate. So I feel like I'm really being challenged to like find new ways of regulating myself that don't include the things that are just always there, my safety, being on the earth. So I just want to acknowledge that first and foremost. And I know that you of all people are
So with you.
you get me.
So with you.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Susanna is a dear, dear friend, my angel oh my gosh, my angel. She her and I met about 10 years ago. She was my couch surfer in Austin. I had a spare room and I was advertising for couch surfers who needed a place to stay, and she was my favorite, my best, and probably one of my last, because I had some sketchy people, but yeah, as well. The Susanna was like the gift of that time, and we've done lots of trainings together, and our paths just have been so parallel for the past 10 years. And she can tell us more about her story in a moment, but she just happened to be 90 minutes away from me in New Jersey the same time that I was in New Jersey, when she usually lives in Portugal. So I'd love, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that miracle.
Yeah. The cosmic weaving is crazy. Yeah, so October a year ago, I flew to the US for what I thought was going to be 2 or 3 week trip to get my Portuguese residency visa and then go visit my mom for 2 weeks. And my background check was delayed, so I had to reschedule my appointment, and it ended up just being this gift. Oftentimes these things happen and we just were like, why is this terrible thing happening? It's such an inconvenience in my life. But it ended up being the biggest gift because my mom got really sick. She ended up having lung cancer. And that gave me the opportunity to be here with her and take her to the doctor to get diagnosed and tested and figure out what was going on. And then be able to just stay and take care of her until she died. And so she passed the middle of February. And I was clearing out her house and getting ready to go back to Portugal. And then, boom, the lockdown hit the week that I was buying my ticket. And I thought, I can either scramble to get on a plane and be completely chaotic trying to look for a new flat in Portugal during lockdown, or I can stay here and just ride it out and go back when things are normal. And here I am, still here. So it's really crazy. And it's amazing that you were here
In February.
in February, and I saw you a week after my mom died.
Yeah, because I was
And
in
then
this.
I saw you again a week after your dad died.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah, so we've really been on this journey together, sister.
Yeah. And the other crazy bit of that is that 13 months before my mom passed, my father passed away. And so I flew from Cyprus to the US to be with my mom for 3.5 months, which is what you did with your mom after your dad passed. And during that time, my dad and I, we healed a lot and we had a good 8 or 9 years, but historically there was a lot of abuse and trauma. And even though I had healed a lot of it, I had been doing this attachment relational work. There's a whole lot of history there that I don't need to get into right now. But after he passed, there was like a certain layer of armoring that I couldn't get to as long as he was still here. And so once he was gone, I was able to go into a deeper layer of healing. And, you know, when you lose your parents, they're your primary attachment, you know, caregivers for most of your life. And even when you're an adult, that will transfer to your partner and various things, but there's something about that loss that is such a primal, as you know, it's such a deep primal loss. There's nothing like losing your parents, and you don't understand it until it happens to you. From the outside, you can have all the empathy and sympathy in the world, but you don't know until you actually go through it.
Yeah. And I feel like having you so close these past few months when I was in the States, like just really with all of the work, I just really want to take a moment to honor the effort, the honor and acknowledge like all of the work that you've done on your own healing and like the depths to which you've dived to learn and retrieve all this fucking golden information about attachment and trauma and repatterning and yeah, the work that you've done. It's like you were just so right there to catch me when like my life was unraveling, you know, after losing my dad and all of this, that primary masculine figure in my life not there anymore, and also kind of paired with like some of my the projections onto lovers and masculine beloveds, masculine kind of role figures in my life, and how I don't think I would have, yeah, I feel like I've come out so much more solid and I'm learning so much. It's quite confronting still because I'm in the rabbit hole right now thanks to you. um though you really helped me. you you really have helped me so much make so much sense of it, and I feel like, you know, it's one thing to be unraveling, but it's another thing to be unraveling with like a sense of what is going on and why it's happening. And I feel like the information that you've been able to kind of like like on my shoulder, oh yeah, this is happening, the attachment, like anxious, you know, and we can get more into it now, but it's like it's been so valuable, and it feels like it's you know, life happens that way. It's like we're in tune and on time because, you know, this is the journey that we're on and we've been on. But I sense so many people in my community, so many of my friends, like in my household here in Australia, like as I've been going through it, they've also been diving into that rabbit hole. So the work that you've done has inevitably been touching all of these people through your acquaintances and also my acquaintances. And so now we're part of a bigger conversation with this larger community around healing our attachment wounds.
So amazing because I feel like this is this missing piece in all of these puzzles of the links of chronic illness, trauma, relational patterns. You know, we talk so much about like conscious partnerships and what that means, but this was a piece that was really missing from the conversation a lot. And we also spent so much time talking about what's happening in here and trying to like do the psychology talking thing, but really what's actually happening is in our nervous system and it's patterned from such a young age. And so to have that awareness of, oh, here's where the development would have happened if everything had been like super perfect growing up in those first primary years. If both our parents were super available and present and were able to co-regulate with us all of the time, we would have developed secure attachment. But that's not the case for a lot of people. And so this understanding of what's happening, it's so great that, you know, anything that happens in a relationship, if the trauma is created in relationship, it's so beautiful that the healing also happens in a relationship. So, you know, the work that I did after my dad died, I felt like that work also helped me show up for my mom in a different way when she got sick, when she was dying. And then when you were here, I was like, oh, this is so perfect that like I can see what's happening. And I also, we've talked so much over the last decade of friendship about certain things. And we've also had like our own things that we were touching in each other and we didn't know what they were. And so now even looking back on that, I can look back at our friendship and be like, oh, I see like this thing was happening, but we didn't have the context for what it was that was happening to us. And so much of those things is like we're looking externally and it's about how the other is, but really what we need to be doing is looking internally and sensing what's happening in our bodies and being able to be with that so that we can release it and heal and ask for our needs to be met and show up, you know, more secure for each other and ourselves and learn how to regulate. And just such a different framework for looking at things.
Yeah, such a game changer. And I feel like it's important to recognize, like you just pointed out, you know, these attachment patterns, they don't just get projected onto our partners. It's like we're this is kind of our makeup, and this is the way that we're wired, and this is the way that we kind of are projecting out into the world onto all of our relationships. So it's like, you know, my anxious tendencies, it's like if you don't, you know, we had that experience while we were in the States. It's like if you didn't call me when you said you were going to call me at 9 a.m, it's like, oh my god, did she abandon me? Is she coming? Are we going on our date today? You know, because I was already in such a like altered state, of a heightened state of anxiety because of my circumstances. Though I really got to see how that played out, again, not just in my kind of intimate partnerships with partners. It's like it's happening in all of my relationships, and the more I can become aware of that, again, it's the more I can become self-responsible for it. And it might not necessarily go away, but I can actually acknowledge it. Oh, hey, like, you know, I'm having a really tough day. I'm feeling overly anxious today. You know, I can acknowledge and bring that to the person that I'm in communication with, to just let them know where I'm at. And actually, this is how you can care for me today. I'm feeling a bit heightened. My nervous system is feeling a bit frayed because I'm fucking locked in a room with four walls, and I just need a little bit of extra kindness and compassion today. And of course, and that in itself is self-loving,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm having the courage. I have the amount, the self-awareness to acknowledge that this is what's going on. And with that self-awareness, it's like the courage it takes to just be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm needing, and putting it out there and trusting that in a in an ideal world, the people who I'm closest to, they understand. Being in relationship with people that we love, we want to support everybody to be thriving and to
Sure.
feel loved.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is most people have the best of intentions and just don't really understand what is happening. And we can't do anything about how anybody else responds or reacts to it, but we can take responsibility for our piece of that, which is understanding what's happening in our bodies when there's activation and talking about that, expressing how we're feeling, getting a radar on that, and then also asking for what we need in that moment, which for so many people is such a like really tender, difficult thing to do. Not just the receiving of support, but actually being vulnerable enough to ask for it. But that's, you know, to have a fulfilling connection with anybody, you have to be vulnerable. And there has to be enough safety with the other person, but also some of our sense of safety, we have to learn how to feel more safe in our bodies. And when we do our attachment work, the anxiety and the avoidant patterns that cause us to have these defensive accommodations, they, you know, you said something about that may be there forever, and that doesn't have to be the case because you are a person who also goes deep in to do your work. So you're already feeling a lot of it. And these patterns, they're just an adaptation that we needed for our survival, you know? So we have to actually really be grateful for them. Like, thank you, attachment anxiety, for keeping me safe. And thank you. Like, and whatever the adaptation is, we're a mix of many things depending on situations also. So it's really important for people to not get pigeonholed into one thing, but it is an adaptation and we can all earn secure attachment. We all have, this is the intelligence of our nervous system. So that intelligence is there. It's just the development of it was stunted in a certain way, for lack of a better term. It was, rerouted into a defensive accommodation. And when we are able to support the nervous system in moving through those things, then we can get to secure attachment. It's like the nervous system, it already knows what to do. So if we can create that support in relationship with someone else, that allows our system to heal. And we have to be willing, and we have to ask for what we need. And we also need somebody who's willing to meet us there too.
Yeah, I think all of those things, all of those things, all of those things, meeting myself first, and yeah, also welcoming other people to meet me there, which is not something that we always have control over. However, I'd really love, because one of the things you've been really supporting me with over this past few months is like, yeah, almost like when there is this perception that other people aren't meeting me there, actually how I can create these bridges. Like I feel like you've been, by doing some of this research and talking with you a bunch about it, it's like I can learn how to almost receive the things that I need from other people that it might not be their way of meeting me normally, but if I can meet them where they're at, then actually my needs become met as well. And I think I'd love if you could kind of, yeah, riff on that a bit, because I feel like, yeah, it could be really disempowering when I'm like, I'm really doing my best to lean in and meet somebody and request that my needs are met, but then this person just can't meet me. Though actually there are a few other steps that I can do that are more self-empowering that I can do, that I can take, that might actually support this other person to meet me, because I'm supporting them to then support me. You know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Kind of, yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple different things involved. I mean, it matters what's going on for the other person too, and maybe it matters in that situation what their attachment style is too. Like, if you're an anxious person and you're having, they call them protest behaviors where you can blame or criticize. And so we all do that in relationship where we're like, you're just not doing this and this. And it's like, if you're on the receiving end of that, are you really going to want to lean in? Yeah, you're going to be like, see ya. And you're going to try to keep yourself safe. So if we take responsibility for how we can show up and create safety for the other person, that's part of the game. Part of the time, though, like in relationships and intimate partnership, especially, it's really challenging because if you are in the middle of conflict, both people's nervous systems can be dysregulated at the same time. And so, in those moments, you have to learn to either go self regulate and come back, which is really hard if you're an anxious attached person because you feel like not talking about the thing is making you worse, but actually you can't talk about it when you're that way because you're never going to get anywhere anyway. This never works. Like, has it ever worked before? No. So we can just like put that away and be like, all right, I'm feeling really anxious right now. Maybe I need to go self-regulate. If it's with another person and you're actually needing co-regulation, which is true, it's not that we go take care of ourselves and meet all our needs. We do have needs that need to be met in relationships, but I think it's about how soft and tender we can be. Like, I think we all know what's going on inside ourselves for, to a certain degree. It's just that we're afraid that we're going to sound like little children. I think a lot of the time it's like we're like, that's so childish, or this, or whatever stories and judgments we have of ourselves. But honestly, if I walk up to you and I'm like, Phoenix, I'm feeling really anxious. Would you just hold my hand for a minute? Like, you're not going to judge me for that. You're going to be like, sure, darling, and you're going to squeeze my hand. And then I'm going to feel better and co-regulated, and we're going to move on and do whatever we're doing. You know? So it's like really trying to be specific. It's really hard, too, if you have a lot of trauma and a history of having your needs dismissed growing up or in relationships. It's really hard to not just ask for needs, but actually identify what they are. I mean, I think I lived the first chunk of my life not even knowing that it was okay for me to have needs because they were dismissed so much. So I'd be in my partnerships and I wouldn't know how to speak up about what I needed because I didn't really have a sense that it was okay to do that. And then once I knew that that was okay, then it was a whole other process of learning how to actually identify what I needed.
Yeah.
Which that's, you know, that's a really, really challenging piece.
Oh, yeah. 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 And for me, these past couple of months, since I've been like diving into this big body of work, it's so vast, so much literature and research that's been done over the years, which I'm super grateful for. It's like really kind of tracking those protest behaviors that like in the past were just so prevalent in all of my relationships. It's like, you're not showing up, I'm shutting down, like you're not meeting me, like I'm out of here, I'm running the other way. And how painful it's been. Fuck, it's been so painful to actually see myself and acknowledge all of the ways in which I've been like unconsciously responsible for like the disconnect. It's like all I really want is connection, and yet these programmed or these ways of being, these wiring that I have, that has led me to have these protest behaviors, how that was in a sense actually keeping the distance between myself and other. And over these past couple of months, the more I've been able to see that, and it's like, oh, because in the past it was like I was so stubborn, like you cross me, maybe it was the Sicilian in me, like just you cross me, you're out of here. Though overriding those programs has been, whoa, the ego who's just like, no, you're stubborn, you're not moving, I'm not moving from this. Though that softening that's been inevitably happening over these past months, and really being able to, yeah, have compassion for myself when I feel those protest behaviors coming up, and recognizing why they've come up, this fear of being abandoned or this fear of being rejected, and still kind of reaching out. And that's been huge. Like I feel, and I probably, I would say you've probably noticed, and some other friends that I'm really close to have probably noticed. And I'm sure, I know my mom, maybe she wasn't super conscious of it, but it's like we didn't fight not once in the 3.5 months. The level of patience that I was able to bring to our connection, and I believe it's a testament to the work that I've done, like the patience I've had to have with myself has then been, I've been able to offer that level of patience to people outside of my, like to other people as well. Though it's been a really arduous, crunchy, just seeing all the ugly parts of myself in the mirror. And the more I do this research and see how many times I was at fault for the breakdown in connection. Yeah, I've been really, and I've been noticing it a lot here in these walls. This 14 days, I'm reading the book you suggested, the Your Brain on Love by Stan Tatkin. And what is it? Brain on Love? Your Brain on Love?
I think the one that I gave you is a different one.
No, the one I'm reading, I'm pretty sure is Your Brain on Love. Let's see what Audible says. Yeah, Your Brain on Love. That's the one I'm looking at.
But it's not Wired on Love. I thought you said Wired
No,
for
Your
love.
Brain on Love, the neurobiology of healthy relationships. And I've been listening to that because I haven't been able to sleep very well. So I'm listening it to as I'm laying down, and just listening to all of these ways on, yeah, just really seeing myself and all the ways that I've been responsible for disconnection in my life, and the grief of that, the grief that I've been meeting inside of myself. Like, wow, if I knew this, had I known this information 5 years ago or 10 years ago, what kind of relationships could I have been in, and having to hold myself really tenderly and really lovingly. It's kind of like, hey babe, you didn't know any better. Like, I just didn't know any better. I really didn't know any better. And now that I know better, it's almost kind of like, ah, this excitement of what's possible and the kind of connections that I might be able to continue cultivating and fostering with other people. And that's exciting.
Yeah, and the thing about these patterns, I mean, the remorse of like realizing that we were responsible. I think there's so much healing that comes from that grief and remorse that allows us to make a change. Sometimes that is the purpose of pain and discomfort, is that when we lean into it, that helps us make a shift. But also, they're just adaptations. They were there to keep us safe. And so there's nothing ugly about those parts of ourselves. Like we can make space for like, thank you for keeping me safe. And I see that it no longer serves me. The things that kept us safe in childhood are the same things that create dysfunction in our adult relationships, which is fucking twisted kind of actually, you know? But when we do that work, like we're able to see, and then that's how we're able to do the healing. So it's really important to have compassion. And, like those are our protective parts. And I think also part of it is that like the patterning, because it was created to keep us safe, as we try to repattern and shift these things, it's not gonna let go so easily. It's not gonna be like, oh, you don't need me anymore? Cool, I'm out of here. Like, it's kind of hanging on. It's not always necessarily our ego too. It's just like, am I still safe? Like, am I actually safe? Am I really safe? And then a little bit will open up, and then it's like, am I really safe? And then you can do a little more and a little more. And with, this kind of healing, with anything that deals with trauma, you're not. I know you and I were both this way when we first met, that we're like, let's dive into like this 10-day dance training and a vision quest and this and 3 ayahuasca ceremonies in a row. Like, go be naked screaming in the jungle. And like, we're like just trying to heal ourselves, we're like trying every single thing that we could. But as far as trauma is concerned, like that will dysregulate. I mean, those things didn't dysregulate my system per se, but like that kind of approach towards trauma, if you're trying to just like clear it all out, you're gonna cause yourself a lot more damage than good. Yeah. And it's really important to just go slowly, and you have to give those little pieces time to integrate and take pauses.
Yeah, I was talking about it. I was meeting with one of my coaching clients the other day, and we were talking about some of the stuff that she's moving through, and she said something like, I just want to be done with it, and I paused her, and I was just like, it's not going to happen like that, babe. It's like the way, it's like, look at it, an archaeologist doesn't go into an ancient civilization that's buried under the ground, an ancient site with a sledgehammer, no way. It's precious. We go in with a little chisel, a little brush, a little chisel, a little brush. And I feel like it was just such a beautiful metaphor to bring to her and to remind myself of, that trauma is that way. Our healing is that way. And of course, I have been the one with the sledgehammer in the past. And I do lean that way sometimes, though not as much anymore in my maturity. And maybe at first the sledgehammer was necessary to just kind of get something moving. Though now that I feel I'm getting to some really tender, subtle layers, takes so much time and love and care with the little chisel and the little toothbrush and the little to really get to these really precious parts that are so vulnerable and so tender. Because if we don't want ourselves to go back into this protective mode. We want to be able to stay open and trust in the safety of being in our bodies, being alive on this earth, being in connection, being in relationship. So if I believe if I take that time to really open and soften, that it's almost this, it's a sustainable way, the reprogramming is happening, that it's more sustainable. It's kind of, it becomes more of the repatterning, the reprogramming, rather than just slapping another program on top of the wound. It's actually letting the wound heal entirely, so
Yeah,
that something new, new way of being, can be the new way of being in the world.
yeah, and one of my teachers, Stephen Terrell, he also says, that like especially now during a pandemic, it's really normal for we're going through a collective trauma together, and it's normal for a situation like that. If anybody has unresolved trauma, that's going to be a situation that's probably going to aggravate some of those unresolved things. And the one thing that he says is like, during those periods, it's not always the time to go around digging in to create more activation. Those are the points where you really want to create regulation within the nervous system. And when you have the regulation, that's when the deeper healing can come, because your nervous system has the capacity to go in. And if it doesn't have the capacity, then you're just going to end up dysregulated, dysregulated, dysregulated. So you have to really give your nervous system that space, otherwise it's not going to take.
Yeah, and I can only, I mean, from personal experience, and I'm sure it's like my sense is that there's such a collective trauma uprising right now during COVID. So many people being in lockdown, being in quarantine, feeling unsafe because we have no idea what's going down in the world, or what the heck is going to happen, the election that's coming up in the US, the quarantine and lockdown that's been happening here in Australia and all over the world. There's so much collective trauma coming up right now. And yeah, I really wish that we could all have these tools. I really wish that these tools really feel like the gold. They really feel like the gold that can really support our awakening. And I don't necessarily mean it in a spiritual sense, awakening, although that is a part of it, though it's just like our awakening to our humanness, because we've had so much of the trauma is pushed down because we've been so busy. We could kind of keep it under the rug for a while, though during this COVID time there's been a lot more space, and it's just inevitable, it's just coming up, so I really pray that these tools that you've been cultivating and so generously been sharing with me, that yeah, people can know that this is a great place to look to support themselves.
Yeah, and I think, the situation, like, there's so many things that can be activating, like you said, like not knowing what's going to happen. We're a species that we really like to know, to have a sense of safety. And so we have to learn how to create safety within our system, while the external is a endlessly unknown. Which, if you look at it, that's how reality is. We don't actually know anything. We just think we do, and then we build around that construct. So it's like, in one sense, nothing has changed at all. It's just the illusion that was actually, it's just crumbling, which is great and really difficult. And so, like, you have people, it's really unfortunate because there are people who are stuck in situations where their home that they're locked down in is not a safe situation, and there's not a lot of tools and resources during this time for situations like that. And there are a lot of things that have been on the rise, and also people who don't have the tools, even if their situation is totally safe at home, that they don't have the tools to deal with the unresolved trauma that's coming up in them. So they're going to their old patterns of, like, either disassociating through drinking, smoking too much, numbing out, watching too much TV, and all of these things. And so it's like, if those people had those tools too, it would be really amazing to be like, oh, here, my thing is coming up, and like, here's a way that I can just regulate my nervous system. I don't have to do that thing anymore.
Yeah.
But also, those old coping strategies were created in an attempt to feel better.
Yeah.
You know, nobody signs up and it's just like, yeah, I want to become an alcoholic and like be dependent on something else. It's that the nervous system didn't receive proper regulation. There's a lot of links between addiction problems and what is happening in the internal systems with neuroception, proprioception, just like our ability to be able to sense internally and externally and to regulate. And so it's like we're seeking regulation through these things.
Mm.
And if people knew that there were other ways, I feel like our whole society would be different. And, you know, you have the feeling of being trapped, like like that was for me. I didn't realize the beginning. I was just like, I'm grieving, so this is actually for me like a relief to not have to deal with people and just like dive into my process. But after a while, when they closed the parks and I didn't have nature, I was like, oh god, now I feel trapped. And thank god I had the tools to be like, what if this is like my whole entire childhood? I was always like leaving the house. I knew when my dad was coming home, so I'd get off on my bike and go ride to a friend's house so that I spent as little time having to navigate a difficult situation for myself. You know, and like maybe that's why I became a digital nomad and travel and like created this like flight was like that I learned at an early age how to go take care of myself because I couldn't get those needs met. But I'm able to identify that that trapped feeling is bringing was bringing up how I felt at a young age. And some people aren't able to identify that. Like a lot of people don't realize that what's happening is unresolved trauma. You know, like you were saying, like the patterns that you had that now you feel like you're able to see where you're responsible. At the time, you thought it was normal. You thought that like how we feel is always valid. It's always valid how we feel. But the narrative around it, it's like our brains are trying to always make meaning of what's happening. And the feeling is valid, but our story around it is not always true, especially when it's a story about the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pretty stoked that, you've got a bunch of resources that we'll share that you so generously have put together for us. Yeah, like that big list of podcasts and resources that you shared with me. I've shared with a few friends, and I'm glad that that you've made something that I can post up after this video for people who are interested in diving in for themselves and learning more about attachment styles and self-regulation. And yeah, because again, it's like this isn't yesterday I had an interview with Angel and we're talking about the prayer. Samantha mentioned, she's like, you guys said prayer like at least 50 or 70 times in your talk. No,
Really?
I'll
Don't
say
get
it
ahead of
again.
the medicine.
I'll say it again. Yeah, I'll say it again. It's part of this bigger prayer for my people, for my community, for the people that I'm in relationship to, that I'm not just this person doing this research and healing my attachment wounds on my own. That if I'm in a community of people who are also interested in doing this for themselves, then I'm a part of a bigger yeah, it's like I've got more people that can understand me and that I can understand, and we can regulate one another and thrive together. And I feel like that's what I feel I've found in this work that you've turned me on to. It's like, whoa, I want all my relationships to have this level of awareness so that we can really be like ninjas together to support the healing of these deeper ancient patterns, which I'm pretty certain they be like ancestral, of course, as you know, and I know as well that these get passed down from our ancestors to our parents and to us, and we can pass these on to our kids. So we have the opportunity to heal this, unravel the trauma that's behind us, and also clear the way for the future generations so they don't have to step into the trauma. So it feels like one of the most radically responsible things we can do to create a beautiful future for ourselves and all our relations, really.
Absolutely. You know, even when I was younger, I always would look at the problems in society, trying to understand. My family was from the former Yugoslavia, so I was like 12 years old when the war was happening, and I would see what was being portrayed on the news media in America, and then I would see satellite TV from Serbia that was showing a totally different story, and I'd see these children my age like running from bombs, and as a child, it made a huge impact in the effects of my family that are there, that I was really questioning, like, what makes people do this to each other? Like, what is this fracture that we don't realize that we're all connected, and that makes us feel like we need to harm one another to get something else, And as I got older, all of those things, when I started to realize, I'm like, not everything in the world, but most of society's major things, I feel like, racism, homophobia, capitalism, like all of these things, I feel like stem from trauma. It's like, if you don't have a lot of trauma, you're not trying to gain power over another. Also, it's our relationship to nature. You know, when you're in a healthy relationship with nature, you're not trying to do fracking and like chop down a ton of forest. You're living in relationship with it in a different way, where maybe you are gonna need some wood to build a house. I'm not suggesting that we go like so
I know.
on some other level, but I just feel like I need to voice that because I know some people might want to go there, but like to live responsibly, to be like, I need this thing, but I don't want to take more than I need. And that this other thing, I'm in relationship, so I need to be giving to it as well, which leads back to what you were saying about your friends, that like if I'm taking care of the other person and helping support them, they're giving back to me, and that's how I get my needs met. It's the same with our planet, and a lot of the systems that are in place are to pit humans against each other, and that's going to create trauma, like, so I really do feel like the best thing we can all do is to turn our gaze inward and take responsibility for healing our own things. And it's a really difficult thing, not everybody has the support, not everybody realizes that the things, there's so many things we assign to people as character, and a lot of them over like during the last couple of years of doing this work, all these things that I thought were character attributes are actually like trauma responses. And I've also been able to watch people heal and not have those responses and be like, oh, like that's really different. That's not how this person is. That my mind created a story that was actually just their unresolved trauma showing up in a way that, they didn't have the tools to show up any differently. And I think if we're doing our own work, not only does it ripple out and shift things, it's like it allows us to have more compassion for other people in that space, so that we're able to respond to them when they're showing up in some, way that feels uncomfortable. If we're able to stay regulated and show up compassionately and have empathy and be like, yeah, I really hear that you don't feel seen by the government or this leader, and just validate their experience without having any agenda, and are just able to be present, I feel like we can create so much, healing in the world in different societies. So if you're doing this with your friends, that's like a mini society right there that's going to shift and become healthier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. This just, yeah, so good. So good. It's been such a game changer. There's so many things that have been game changers. 2020 has been the hardest year. And I feel like for me, it's also been the most transformative year as well, though that hasn't come without its, yeah, a lot of discomfort and a lot of heartbreak, though yeah, it really feels like it's preparing me, preparing us for whatever comes next. This resiliency, Angel also mentioned that in our chat yesterday, this resiliency that's necessary to step into the next.
Mhm. Yeah, and in being with those parts of yourself, that's how we gain more capacity to
Yeah,
be
because
with
if we can be
the
with
parts
those
of
parts
ourselves.
of ourselves, we can be with those parts of other, which is
Exactly.
also a bigger ourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I love you so much.
Thank you. Can I take a moment just to honor some witnessing of, like your time during these few months?
Yeah.
And just that, yeah, it's really been such an honor to see you softening and opening in so many new ways, and how you were showing up with your mama. And I love being at your house and watching your guys' relationship because you're also like a mini her. So it's cute to see these like two little tiny women together and loving each other so much. But also like that you have really been able to lean in to look at the discomfort in yourselves, and like we can't expect anybody else to give those spaces the love that they need if we're not willing to go into them and share them. So I really want to honor your courage to be vulnerable, and even just like your courage to name all of the things you're feeling, like even when you were going to the airport, to just be like, I'm feeling really afraid right now, like that. I know the Phoenix I knew even like 2 years ago probably wouldn't like want to show anybody that they felt afraid. And it's like when you do that, like I'm able to be so much more tender with you. And I just feel like that is the healing, is like we all want these vulnerable, rich, connected experiences, and we don't always realize like how much of a role we play in creating them. Yeah, so thank you. It's just been so precious to have this time with you the last few months and right now. And I'm sure we'll do it again and again and
Oh,
again.
amazing. Oh my God, we've had so many adventures in nature, going up to the sanctuary, praying, dancing, singing, getting weird in the rain, on medicine. Like, oh gosh, you were just such a balm, such a just soothing balm. Yeah, for this heartbreak. And just so grateful to you. I'm so grateful that the web, the web that weaves us has wove us together at the same place at the same time, from like such opposite parts of the planet doing our things. And yeah, we were such a gift for one another.
Oh my God, I feel like you came at this point where I really needed an adventure buddy to go pray with and dance with and sing with. And so I'm also so, so grateful to you, because you can't, the situation requires a lot of isolation, living in a sort of vacuum in a certain way. And yeah, so that we were able to just like create our own little safe pod to go do
Yeah.
things, super magical for me.
Yeah, and soon you'll be on your way to Portugal.
Yes,
You'll soon be leaving America.
thank God.
You fucking hung in there, babe. I had to 3.5 months. You've been there a year. Like, for those
Crazy.
of you in America, know New Jersey, this woman is a fucking champion.
The funniest thing about it too is that like 2 years ago, I created a whole entire life to be a digital nomad and like get out of this country. So it's, like we've also both been going through this like soul retrieval of a lifetime, where you were going through all the old things that were in your mom's house. Here, it's like now both of my parents are gone. I'm going through my mom's house and clearing out things and really like wrapping up my history and tethers to this continent of like of course I got stuck in the place where my trauma was created during a pandemic to heal it. And then of course you showed up to be like, let's go out in nature and pray together. And like, and I'm like, yeah, so we've just been able to hold each other through this. And yeah, I was like, I feel like I have like a superhero friend with me.
I love you so much. Thank you, darling. Thank you for showing up on this show and sharing your brilliance and sharing your gifts. And yeah, you did make that resource thing available.
It's not quite done because today was a little bit of a doozy, but I will finish it up tomorrow and then I'll post it in the comments when it's ready so people can go to the website and get it done.
Awesome. Yeah, because I have a feeling people are going to be like, what? And I've been telling people to wait, that we're going to post it up. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, there'll be a resources page. I just need to tidy up a little
Take your time.
text edits and then it'll go live tomorrow.
I love you, darling.
Love you
I'll talk
too.
to you soon. Bless your day, your evening. Bye.